Sadhana is giving regard to the sacred and allowing the personal to be disused, not to be invested in. So you don't use that credit card anymore. You cut it up. So every experience is a means to practice equanimity, which is the basis and foundation for noticing and living in the sacred. So the emotions are not something that happens to you. They're something you use to deal with the experience you're in. But you all think they're just happening to you. And experience is making them happen to you. No, this is how you developed your emotional relationship to life over all these years. This is what you did. You responded in a way that generated certain emotions under certain circumstances. And you keep doing it, and it doesn't work at all. And so you have dialed up these great strategies involving these great emotions to everyday experience. And that's why you don't have any equanimity. And that doing that, generating that, is how you generate a sense of yourself. So when you feel the most afraid, you feel you're a personal self the most. When you feel really sad, you feel you're the personal self the most. When you're really mad, you feel like you're the personal self the most. So if you're just walking in nature and just feeling groovy, feeling groovy. You don't feel like a personal self when you're feeling groovy. What do you feel like? Just open, just open flow, yeah. So given that, why your practice doesn't go deeper, where you live and realize the divine and notice and give your regard and love, giving away your ego and your personal self, is because you don't have that equanimity yet. You're still playing the game with the personal self really hard. All right, so you're faking it. And what are you faking? All sorts of emotions. All sorts of sympathy. All sorts of everything. And all this fakery creates me. The sense of me. It's all fakery. If you're not faking, then you are just in the flow. You're feeling groovy. Not faking it, you're feeling groovy then. So if you're feeling groovy, is that like a special divine status you now have? No, it's just the absence of the ego or the fakery. But if you live in the absence of fakery and ego, what is occurring? Groovy consciousness. If you have anything in the past that bothers you, that you feel disturbed about, that you feel like you have to go over and be upset about, you ain't doing sadhana. You just aren't. Because what is the past?
It's the past. Doesn't exist now.
The graveyard.
It's gone.
Graveyard, nothing. Yeah. Quite a great man, the graveyard. It's nothing. So why carry a lot of strong emotion around nothing?
Right.
Because it gives you a sense of
Separate
self.
Yeah.
So I can't bear. I want to feel groovy. I don't want to feel a sense of separation. But I can't let go of my son because he's mad at me. This makes me feel really separate. Well, just let go of it. You're with your guru now. Meditate on what? Groovy. Don't meditate on
Crappy.
crappy. So you can go out in the world and everyone, you meet a whole bunch of vitals and they're going to be angry at the least little thing, right? You might meet some solids at your job and they're going to be scared to, what did the boss say? What do I do? I don't know. Ah! And then you're going to meet some peculiars that go, oh, it's just the end of the world. I can't go on anymore. And that's going to be it. And everybody's going to and you're going to look at experience and say, not all that much is happening. So everybody goes around and creates the identity based on these overreactive strategies that have been unconsciously developed. That's why this practice is a conscious practice. What is unconscious and not true has to be seen. So if it's seen, it's now conscious. When you see something and it's not good and you know you have the freedom not to choose it, you won't choose it. So the only kind of sense of identity you can ever have is based on all your reactive, ungroovy, faking it relationship to experience. You can't win. It's set up to be a losing game. So either you're groovy now, or you're never going to be groovy. You don't start doing practice when you leave this room. You're groovy right now, or you're not going to be ever groovy. You come to your teacher and say, well, I want to really be with you, and I want to realize the self, but I have all these problems, so I have to take care of first. No. This is a place to get groovy. This is where you're groovy. If you can't do it here, you can't do it anywhere. Right? It's like, what does water taste like? I would love to have some water. In my culture, we only have half a glass a day. What would it be like to have a whole bottle? Well, here's a whole bottle. Oh, but I can't drink it now. That's how everybody's acting. Why? Because unconsciously, you're committed to an identity. And that identity is based on this whole game of the mummery Adida talks about, which is pursuing and living and reacting to experience. But what you're living and reacting to, basically, is not really even happening most of the time. Because why are you that afraid? Right?
Make it up. Make it up.
Yeah. You're making it up.
Yeah.
Why are you that sad? Nothing sad's happening to you. Why are you that mad? It's not that serious, right? So you've been living in these extreme emotions over all these ordinary, everyday experiences. That's why people are crazy and insane, because they're living at a heightened emotional reactivity to everything, which doesn't really call for those strong emotions. What does it call for? Mostly common sense, problem solving, some compassion, sympathy, kindness, patience, integrity, dignity, Doesn't call for being really sad and really mad and really scared. And yet, you've all lived in those heightened emotions, right? Yeah. So you can think like you've been doing this practice for years and you should be getting somewhere and you might be close to enlightenment, you just don't know. No, because you're still living in the mummery as an ego and dialing up all these strong emotions all the time. They can't be unconscious, they have to become what? Conscious. So if you just get mad, see someone is by and they give you a look and you don't like it, and maybe they weren't even really looking at you, and you get all mad, and you have to say, wait a minute, dial that back, jeez. So being able to see it and dialing it back, that's the foundation practice. That's equanimity. That's balance. You're not reinforcing a separate self. You're not creating ego anymore. So if you don't create ego anymore and you live in balance, what happens? The divine becomes recognizable. You recognize it as yourself, as your true self. You haven't been able to recognize the divine because you're living the game of a pretender of someone separate. But see, you know why no one ever gets happy? Because the game's rigged. Because no one ever can practice creating a personal self that is actually based on happiness. Because you have to dial back all these emotions to do it. And once you dial back all these emotions, you're groovy and you're not faking it anymore. You're not faking being a person anymore. Right? Yeah. So then, wow, just open flow, feeling groovy.
You're just groovy, you're not groovy and patting yourself on the shoulder at the same time.
You're not the groovy guy.
Yeah.
You're just groovy. There's not a groovy guy, there's just groovy. There's not a groovy girl, there's just groovy. But there's a lot of fakers. And they all have your names. Every part of life, no matter what age you are, has a similar need for either calling up a strong emotion or dialing it back. But what happens to people who are older? They seem more afraid, or more angry, or more sad. Why is that?
Just the build.
Yep, they dialed it up all the time, never doing the practice of dialing it back. Sometimes people have to dial it back or they lose everything, right? So you can say, well, I come to the meditation hall, I do mala, I do service, I must be getting really spiritual now. Common mistake beginners make, What has to change? All that has to become a conscious process. You have to develop equanimity by being in experience in the right way, with the right emotion. Emotion's not happening to you. In the same way, this is not happening to you when you lift your arm. You decide to lift your arm. It doesn't require a lot of thinking about it, nor does the emotions require a lot of thinking about it. I can inspire you, you can be in my transmission field, I can show you what it is to live and be happy. You can enjoy that in my company, but unless you do this conscious part of this practice here, you're just throwing away your own enlightenment. You're creating a personal self based on this game that Adida calls the mummery. And most of your emotions have been so whacked out. That's why when people go to see their guru, they want their guru to solve all their problems instead of hanging out and being groovy. Well, somebody knows how to be in the groove, be groovy. I want to hang out with them. But then you want to talk about all the and they're all dialed up, really, like you're an intense victim of life or this bad experience or this suffering. You get a chance to be groovy. Be groovy. So when you come into the company of the guru, it's time to notice and be groovy. It's not time to bring your problems and have them get solved. It's time to be groovy now, to learn how to be groovy. And so you have to dial everything back that isn't groovy. So you have to leave all your problems by the door. And when you leave, you've got to bring groovy with you. So when you tend to want to go over and be afraid of those problems or sad about those problems, first of all, you see there isn't any problem that's happening to you right now. You're just dialing up a lot of emotion for nothing. So when you're in your room by yourself in your nice comfy bed, I'm so sad. Oh, I'm so mad. I'm scared. What are you doing?
Insanity.
You're doing insanity because you're actually just in a nice bed feeling groovy. But you decide not to be groovy. You decide to be all those things. Nothing's happening to you right now. So if you go through life and dial all that back because you're saying, well, that's not really the appropriate response right now, nothing really is happening, you'll find out that you can live in being groovy. So when people come out and see me out wandering in the Southwest or in the malls or whatever, they go, hey, that girl isn't being groovy. That old lady's being groovy. They don't know what it is, but might as well call it being groovy, right?
Yeah.
And so, why can't they? No, I'm doing this exact same activity they're doing. So why can't they be groovy right now?
Got all those emotions.
Yeah.
The game.
They can.
The game of the mummery, of the personal self. See, the personal self is never the happy self. It's always the impersonal self that is the happy self. The personal one is full of complaints and fears and angers and disappointments, wanting something else to happen, something not to have happened. That's the personal self that everyone collects and says is me. But no one says, hey, that's not me, I'm the groovy one. Those are things that just happened. I'm the groovy one. So, with that, that's the end.
Creepy one.